Welcome, everyone. The streets are buzzing, and another day, another free agency to chop up, and it's been crazy. I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be a great show. And how are we doing, EJ?
CT. I need a nap. I need a break. I need a rest from all of this trade activity, all this free agency. It has been an amazing couple of days. So busy, man. But it's good to be on. Good to see you. How are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. This is what we live for as fans. New York Nation, New York Knicks Nation, worldwide. And yeah, this free agency, just when you think it was dying down, every single day it's getting more and more crazy by the day. League wide, obviously with the Knicks as well. And I'm looking forward to chopping up these new acquisitions that were confirmed as well during the week. A lot of them were no surprise, but we've got a lot to talk about in terms of the structure of the contracts, the machinations. What does it mean? We're going to talk about their fit, what we think about the signings. Of course, the chat's going to be buzzing. And of course, we'll talk about what's next, with free agency still going. We'll talk about the cap space situation and what these moves signalize, EJ, in terms of what do we feel like Leon's next move could be longer term as well. But of course, shout out to the chat, everybody here and everyone watching on replay. Join us in the comment section, replay gang, and we'll continue the conversation after this live stream. But Dirty Dancer, salute. Buzzer Beater, already up in here, salute. Cash Out, and Juan, and looking forward to it tonight. EJ, let's start with the initial signing, free agency. There was a lot of back and forth over whether or not that the Dallas Mavericks or the Miami Heat would get a meeting with Jalen Brunson. It seemed a little bit messy, but we sort of heard, earlier in the day, it was already leaked that he had made his decision. What did you make of the fact that there was confirmation already, and then there was word that he would be meeting with Miami and Dallas, and then we heard that Dallas and Miami pulled out after he just told them that, no, I'm signing with the Knicks?
Listen, CT, we're Knicks fans. We've been Knicks fans for a very long time. Even the things that are guaranteed, you need a little bit of Knicks drama and a little bit of Knicks sauce on top of it just to make it a little exciting. So, for weeks, if not for months, I mean, going back to the times we were meeting with Berman and having a conversation with Berman about it, there had been those predictions that Jalen Brunson was as good as guaranteed coming to the New York Knicks. But in the 11th hour, there was a little bit of drama. Not sure if these were real meetings that Miami and Dallas had lined up, or if it was a smokescreen to prevent any tampering charges. But at the end of the day, we have Jalen Brunson. We have a starting point guard. We know definitely who's starting at point guard this season. I think this is the first time we can actually say this in I don't even know how long, but it's good to have him starting point guard. Is he the one that everyone wants? At this point, it doesn't make a difference. We actually have a starting point guard.
Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned that last part as well, because you've got to make steps. In getting to my initial reactions, obviously it being no surprise, EJ in chat, about us welcoming in Brunson. We heard the connections all throughout the year. And then after draft night, it became more and more a reality as it's sinking in. And we see some stats up on the graphic as well. And I saw him in the playoffs. I saw basically every single game with Dallas, especially that Utah first round series when it was really on the radar, when Allen Houston and World Wide West were in the building. And I watched that breakout performance, and I saw a guy grow in confidence. I saw a guy comfortable with his fit in terms of playoff ball, leading the scoring through stretches of the game, getting guys involved, and just being that leader on the floor that he is, what he was in college, Villanova. And he comes in with a pedigree, at the peak of his career. I keep stressing that, EJ chat, 25 years of age. We're going to get potentially 7-8 years straight of a starting caliber point guard in the league. Now, is he in the higher echelon of starting point guards? No. But if he's above 15, if he's in the half above top half, like I said, it's a huge win. And always say I love signing a player in free agency as opposed to trading for a player, because we
Absolutely.
absolutely did not need to give, or so far with, we'll talk about sign and trade possibilities, EJ, but so far in terms of just signing him straight out for money, that's a huge win for this organization.
No, absolutely, CT, buddy. I mean, you said it perfectly. I've seen on social media some comparison, some Knicks fans who are down on Jalen Brunson and comparing him to Jerome James because of the playoff performance. Jalen Brunson is not Jerome James. He's not that same kind of player. It's also a very different league. What Jerome James was, 15 years ago, 10 years ago,
Mhm.
about 15 years ago. It's not the same kind of NBA. You need a point guard. You need a lead point guard to run your team. And what he proved that's different than a Jerome James is that he could play next to a superstar player, and he could lead a team during crunch time. Jerome James never did that. He had a
Yep.
couple of good games for the Supersonics, but he wasn't that kind of player. The other thing that Jalen Brunson does that's really important in this league is that he can potentially increase the values of the players who are on the floor with us. He can help grow an RJ, and not just grow RJ as a player, but also grow RJ's value, grow IQ's value, potentially Julius Randle's value. I mean, one of the things, and I know there are a lot of people, perhaps even on the chat, who are not necessarily happy with this offseason because we haven't gotten rid of Julius Randle. But if you have a point guard, if you have a lead point guard who's solid, who has brains, who can handle New York, this is someone who can help elevate Julius's game. And then at that point, you can decide, do we have the potential of raising Julius's value to trade him later on? So that's what really makes me excited about having a point guard, a solid point guard, is that every player potentially on the team gets better, because now you know who's going to have the rock. Now you know how you have someone's going to call out positions, call out plays, and we don't have to have this kind of haphazard, no one really knows their role. And just one more thing too,
Yep.
we have to remember, a couple of seasons ago, it was Elfrid Payton. Think about some of the point guards that we've had recently and how teams played our point guards. Teams basically they realized we were playing 4-on-5 most of the time because they didn't respect our point guards. And I think that we finally have someone, at least on a starting night in October, that teams are going to have to guard and say, okay, we're going to have to game plan in some way, shape, or form for Jalen Brunson, and that makes me excited.
Yep, absolutely spot on, EJ. You hit the nail there. Yep, other teams respecting the role he's going to get, other players involved. Now he's got the bag, right? Let's put it in perspective. Let's pretend we're Jalen Brunson. The motivation behind wanting to come back and play here was wanting to take on a challenge. He's got generational wealth now, and that sort of that outside distraction is now gone. So he can focus on just balling out, getting other guys involved. When you get that big payday, there has to be some kind of relief, right? It's guaranteed 4 years. That day is just building up and building up. You're balling out all the hard work you've done, all the early starts, late finishes in the gym, and when you balled out in the playoffs and you help the Mavericks make the Western Conference Finals, and you finally get that bag from Leon, your godfather. You join your father as well in this situation. It has to be quite significant for him, wanting to take on this challenge. And we see that he was a Knicks kid around the facility. And I just want to hit on the perception around the league, which is what you touched on as well. We had some great feedback on Twitter, and that this is a further reflection of the signing when you have, his Villanova teammate, McCall, and we have some animals and dogs out there in Memphis, Desmond Bain and Ja Morant respect his game. So that tells you a lot from really high caliber players around the league.
Yeah, I even saw on social media today Davion Mitchell, bigging up his game and just talking about how difficult he is to guard. One of the things that we have to always accept as Knicks fans is, and I'll just admit this: when players respect another player's game, that's the highest compliment you can have for an asset on your team. When someone looks and talks about your starting point guard and they have respect for your starting point guard, that says a lot. And I think that we have to remember that our starting point guard last year couldn't last the entire season. He barely lasted half the season, and then we go back before that with Elfrid Payton. We haven't had great point guard play the last 10 plus years. Maybe the most reliable point guard we've had in a decade and a half was Raymond Felton, and then before that, Derek Harper and Charlie Ward. What's different about this signing, even if he's not your favorite player, even if he's not John Morant, even if he's not Steph Curry, what he is that he's going to be reliable, and he's also not over the age of 30. He's also not coming off of an injury. So this is a different kind of signing where it's not the sexiest name, but there's something to be said about someone who decided, I'm not going to take the 5th year option, and I'm going to leave Dallas and I'm going to leave playing next to Luka because maybe I have something that I want to prove here. And we can't diminish that, because there are other players who come to New York and they run away. I'm not going to throw any shade at anyone, but I'm throwing shade at some players who are leaving, the 718 area code because it's a little bit too much for them. So I give respect to players who want to play in New York.
Yeah, that basic base sums it up. And I want to ask the chat too. Do you feel like he's a player that's going to thrive in the moment, in the environment, in the Mecca? The pressure here with his father, it's going to be added pressure having your father on the as an assistant coach on the sidelines as well. You've just signed the bag. He saw what Julius Randle faced with the crowd. He would have known all about that. Yet he still said, "I'm going to New York." Like you said, I'll spurn the 5th year, a Western Conference finalist team, all of that. Just to it means a lot. Just to put on that New York jersey, it just shows that it means a lot to him.
You remember when Amari came over? Amari was like, he didn't have the best Knicks career, but I think a lot of Knicks fans always loved Amari Stoudemire because he wanted to come. Now, obviously, Phoenix wouldn't give him the contract, but there's just something about a player who decides, all right, I'm going to come, I'm going to don the uniform. I loved Amari, because he wanted to play in New York. And, I think the other thing we have to remember, and these are other people speaking, and I don't remember exactly who said this. We also have to remember Jalen Brunson's contract towards the end of it is going to be kind of different because the league has to undergo a new CBA. So what the contract means now versus what it will mean when there's more money being pumped into the NBA, and what the 24, 25, 26, $27 million will mean with a new CBA, and how much money Amazon is pouring into, for example, professional baseball, how much money is being poured into the NFL. We can't, by the end of this contract, what this contract looks like today, it won't have the same value in his age 28, age 29 season. So we have to keep a little bit of perspective now, because the contracts will look differently in about 4 or 5 years.
Yep, absolutely. And there you see the figure 104 projection. And I want to touch on, obviously, a little bit more about the sign and trade possibilities and the great questions from the chat. Salute to the best chat out there. And so there's 2 ways the Knicks can structure Jalen Brunson's contract. It can be a descending contract or an ascending contract in value. So the average of the 4 years is 26 million. They could start it at, I think, 23, go up to 24, 25, 26, and so forth. Or they could start it at 26 and go down each year. They have the cap space to do it. It looks like, and we have some commentary from Bobby Marks as well. So I will just bring that up now. Yep. So yeah, Robbins, we have the situation where the 1.123 million threshold as well. So the Knicks look like they're going to use up all the space to get to that and operate as a under the cap team. I feel. So with that said, yeah, the Knicks can't really do anything else if they do it as a descending contract. But it looks like they may have got their guys, and then everyone else is veterans minimum. Or the sign and trade possibility comes in, EJ, chat. Now, I think the Knicks are still going to gauge while they haven't had to put pen to paper yet. The ink's not dry on the contract, so there's a chance if someone else becomes available that they may need to clear cap space for, then an Evan Fournier sign and trade or a Julius Randle trade will open up that space.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and we can't forget, and I did kind of shade them earlier. By all reports, whatever happens in New Jersey, whatever happens in Brooklyn, whatever happens with Brooklyn and KD and the Kyrie situation is going to definitely have some sort of impact with what happens with the Knicks. There are but so many teams that can take on a KD, but so many teams that can take on a Kyrie. But in terms of the business of the league and who shakes out, who becomes available after being cut, for example, Danilo Gallinari was traded earlier this week and is already going to be waived and making his way to Boston. So, we have to consider that there are a lot of moving parts. So even though we do know that Brunson and Hartenstein they're going to be Knicks, there are a variety of ways that they can become Knicks. And I'm sure Brock Eiler is, reading every single rule in the cat book to figure out like, okay, what are the fancy ways we can get each of these players and save a little bit of money because we don't know who might become available.
Yeah. And of course, we always look at when a deal's done with the Knicks, are they the team on the better end of the deal? And in this time, there's no doubt about it. In terms of, like I said earlier, bringing in a player where you didn't have to trade anything away. And I stress this, Jalen Brunson, is not coming in here to be the number one option long term. This is a building block and a piece to move the organization forward. Now let's see what else comes of that. But in terms of Dallas, they lose a player for nothing now, most likely. And that is going to be, that sends reverberations around the league. The Knicks are finally, EJ, have been on the good end of any deal.
Yeah. I mean, the Jalen Brunson deal, I think what most people, the only critique that many people will have, aside from the money, but like when you go through the contracts that a lot of point guards have, he's not even at the top of the point guard list in terms of those contracts. So then remember what I said earlier about what the CBA will be doing in about 3-4 years, where when we're looking at his contract, particularly if they get a chance to construct it in a descending fashion, it'll be a tradable contract if we need to or if we want to trade that contract. This is not a Russell Westbrook $40+ million contract that everyone looks at and says, not me, I don't want any part of this. This is a solid player who's in his mid-20s. His age matches the RJ timeline, the OB timeline. This is someone who's played playoff basketball in the West. This is the kind of person you want leading your team, and someone who wants to play in New York. And I think that normally when we look at a move, we criticize it and we say, okay, typical Knicks. But this is a move where I can pretty certainly say that this was a solid move. And when the organization makes solid moves, you have to give them credit. And Leon and the front office, the rest of the front office deserve credit for it. Obviously, it was a little bit easier because this is family, obviously. But at the same time, again, this is the first time in a long time we can guarantee who's going to be our starting point guard in October, opening night.
Yep, that consistency. We saw RJ tweet something out in support of the move as well, which is great. And I've been saying way before we knew this was a formality that the age, I would be okay with Brunson. Once we started hearing about some of the numbers floated around, I said, oh, it's getting a little bit high. He's playing great. But the thing that would make me still sign off is his age. 25 years of age. He fits this next timeline if we do have a contention window with RJ and Brunson as well. And Julius is obviously still 27 and his future is in doubt still. But in terms of Brunson's age, I'm really high on that. 25 years of age, ascending. The last time the Knicks have assigned an ascending player has been since Melo, Marbury.
Yeah.
Well, Melo had sort of reached the heights of his career already. We don't know. Jalen Brunson may not have shown his best yet. That's Knicks fans. That's what's good about it. He may not have shown his best yet. And like what EJ just said with the contract, if it's descending and the cap goes up, I mean, we could find ourselves in a sweet situation in 2 years' time if we do need to make a blockbuster deal, and we'll talk about that more.
Yeah, I'm actually cheating. I'm trying to go back and, like, the chat, we can have some fun with it. If you can guess, like, the past Knicks rosters, like the last 10 years, and who was the starting point guard
Oh,
for each one of those teams, like, we could actually have fun with that. And I was
yeah,
actually trying to cheat or try to remember some of them. But that is the best part about it, is that this is a player who can still grow. And the difference between 2022, 2023 versus 2021, 2022 is we have a starting point guard who's not at his ceiling yet. There's still room for growth that can definitely take place. Whereas last season, with Kemba as our starting point guard, we were hoping that Kemba could remain healthy. This is not the same concern that we have this year. The concern that we have this year with Jalen Brunson is this his ceiling? Like, that's the concern. It's not about his health. It's not about will he want to trade demand. It's not anything of that concern. It's about, is this the final product? And we're pretty sure this is not the final product of who he'll be as a player. So I know that some of us are concerned, and I've seen this in the chat. There's some people that are concerned about the overpay. But at the same time, too, we have to take into consideration I live in New York City. New York has ridiculous taxes. So if you're going to get a player who's going to play in New York, you're going to have to probably pay a little bit extra. And to potentially give up a fifth year, you might have to overpay to compensate for losing that fifth year and for those New York taxes. I love New York, greatest city in the world, but it is expensive to live in New York City.
yep. Those are facts. But I always counter that by saying you're the starting point guard on the New York Knicks in the Mecca as well, so that it balances itself out in terms of the all the perks and the
Yeah.
things that you get along with it. You'll never have to pay for a drink anytime he's out somewhere. He succeeds here, he'll always have that legacy as well.
Yeah,
That's
that's
the
true.
biggest thing. Everybody wants to shine in the spotlight as well. And part of me that gets me is why everyone wants to team up in Miami and things like that. And we'll talk about that more, with the Florida and the no stay taxes. But part of me is like, they all just want to buddy up with
Hmm.
people in Miami, right?
Yeah.
Jimmy Butler went to Miami and sort of started something on his own. But now there's talk about other people wanting to all buddy up in Miami. And with the New York Knicks, I love the fact that people just want to come here to be that guy, everybody want to be that dude in New York.
Yeah. They're not writing a lot of books about, the Miami Heat. They're writing books about the New York Knicks. I mean, we had the honor of having Chris Herring on the program and having a chance to interview him. And if you think about it, John Starks and Patrick Ewing and Anthony Mason, Charles Oakley, they never won a championship. But the fact that a book was written about a very powerful and incredible book written about a non-championship team, it says something about the New York Knicks and the legacy of the New York Knicks. We may not have as many championships as the Lakers or as the Celtics or even the Heat at this point, but there's something about the history and the legacy of the New York Knicks, and there's something special about donning that uniform, and just how passionate Knicks fans are. I mean, if you think about this podcast and how many spaces are dedicated to the New York Knicks, it's because it's a special franchise, because the fans love the organization that much.
Yep. And in terms of the bigger picture now that Jalen Brunson is a Knick, we'll talk a bit more later about the glut of the point guard situation. Derrick Rose is still here, and another guy that can really stay in his role now with the solidification of Brunson and the starting point. Derrick Rose won't be required to start any longer. And I salute to the chat. M. Rivera, try living in Long Island. Good one.
Look, I work on Long Island, so I know. I hear about it all the time. I hear, taxes. I got you, Rivera.
Yep. And salute to everyone coming through in the chat. Let's get it. Appreciate you. And before we hit on the next signing, and we'll obviously talk more about the roster and the fits for everybody. But Will makes a great point in the chat as well. The playoffs, that's a signal that Jalen Brunson hasn't reached his ceiling as well. When you talk about a number one option for stretches of the game, EJ, where does Brunson now fit in the totem pole in terms of he could while out and finish games off for us, and then he can also step back into that off ball second, third, fourth option if RJ and whoever else has got it going.
Yeah, we talked about this on the last show, positionless basketball, and how there's a beauty. Even though I'm a Knicks fan, I can appreciate beautiful basketball. And there's something about, for example, watching Golden State or watching the Miami Heat's defense. There's just something amazing about watching players who are interchangeable and who have the ability to switch or to change their roles, understanding the actual moment at that particular time. So having a player who had to play next to a ball dominant Luka Doncic, there's something nice about having someone who can be on the court and know he's going to be on the court, either as your primary ball handler, or then having the ability to switch as your off ball guard. There's something great about having that, and that's the kind of signings you want to make, because it means that this is someone who isn't confined to one position. And that means that if we get another player, he'll still find a role to be on the court. He'll still find a way to be on the court. He'll still find a way to be there at crunch time. So this I know, again, will focus, some of us will focus on how much he got paid, but focus on the versatility, focus on this is a player who still has a ceiling, who can grow. The fact that he's young, and we don't have to worry about whether or not he can make it towards the end of the season. He played a heck of a lot of basketball this last season, and we can't say that about Derrick Rose. We can't say that about Kemba Walker, but we can say this about Jalen Brunson, and he played in the playoffs last year and played very well.
Yeah, definitely played under pressure, and like we reiterated, he will make everyone better on this team. RJ Barrett, just the gravity he'll pull from the D. Another threat on the floor. You can never have enough threats. And you see in the chat and in the chart, everybody, the leading scorers by position on the floor. Jalen Brunson is incredibly efficient scorer, close to the basket for a player of such small size. That's just amazing to me. He's crafty with the hezzy and the head fakes and a tight dribble, and he's a lefty as well. EJ, how do you see all that fitting in with us?
I think the one concern, to be totally objective, is outside shooting. This leaves us in a tricky position, and I've talked about this several times on the show. Mitch is back, which I know we're going to talk about soon. Julius is still with us, and RJ is still with us as well. Obviously, that's going to be the concern: is how do you get four guys who love to score in the paint to move a little bit further out from the paint? Because Dallas played, a 5-out kind of game where, you now have Jalen Brunson having more room to operate. That's my only concern at this point. But again, having a guard who can score consistently in the paint, that's a new element. That's a new dimension. Think about how many times we were on the show last season, and RJ or Julius would be upset because they weren't getting calls, as they were diving into the paint. Now you have a point guard who actually scores when he gets into the paint. So does that make a difference in terms of 2 to 3 or possibly 4 games where if RJ and Julius aren't making shots or aren't making their free throws, you at least have a player who's consistently able to score in the paint? That's a big difference.
Yeah, and Tibbs is going to love the fact that he drives. Tibbs loves a guard that gets dribble penetration. And I think he's going to have a huge impact on quickly. Let's talk about that as well. Because JB can, he learned to play with his size. He learned to be effective, get fouls. He's obviously a stockier frame than Quickly, and he can take more contact. But he's crafty, and I think Quickly is going to learn some things off him. And you're spot on with the 3-point shooting, EJ. That's a huge swing skill as well. If he's learning to play off ball a lot more and he improves the catch and shoot 3-point threat, We all know how much this team will need shooting with RJ and Randall on the floor as well. Yeah, if he can continue to be better in that regard with the dribble threat, I think that could definitely take this team to the next level.
Yeah, I think that's where we all know that whatever the product is that starts the season, or at least where we are right now, I'm pretty sure this may not be the final product that makes it into probably even training camp, but at least opening night. There might be one move or another move, because we do have a lot of point guards, and there's a need for additional shooting. But at the same time, again, that ability to get into the paint and to score and to cause chaos, that's really important, particularly because, think about how many games we were here and the game just slowed down. It ground to a halt, and there was no ability for the Knicks to produce offense. Think about how many games, like in the fourth quarter, we were scoring, 12 points, 14 points, 16 points the entire fourth quarter. And it's not because we didn't deserve to win the game. It's just because we couldn't muster up enough offense to actually win the game. So that's, a point guard who's able to get into the paint with determination, and who can show how to do it and who can create that chaos. That's a win, even though there are some questions, for example, 3-point shooting. But I will take a point guard who can drive into the lane and cause some chaos.
Yep. And the response, I just want to touch on that amongst the chat here, the wider podcast, the online Twitter. The response to this has been mostly positive to this situation. I think people come to grips with it after the draft and trading out of the 11th spot. People have had more time to absorb this. And then just thinking around the Eastern Conference, EJ, I'll put you on the spot and say how much better, and we'll talk about all the other moves and what's to come, but just Jalen Brunson alone, how much better is this team going to be, and where does he rank in the Eastern Conference landscape among point guards or around the league to you?
Wow, that's a big question. I thought we were friends, CT. In terms of where this places us in the Eastern Conference, I think without a doubt we are going to, without a shadow of a doubt, we'll be competing for the play-in. There are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. We did play the game, I think, last week about where we were in the conference, but things have changed drastically since last week. So I do think that without seeing all the other moves that are going to take place, without knowing what's going to happen with the Nets, without knowing if Boston's going to make a sneaky move, without knowing what happens with Miami, I could easily see the Knicks in the 7 or 8 category. And in terms of where does Jalen Brunson fall in terms of point guard, that's a really, really good question. Because it's when you look at, for example, the Atlantic Division, when you look at our division, we don't know. Again, we don't know what's happening with the Nets. Boston just got Malcolm Brogdon, but again, he's a question mark in terms of health. When you look at Philadelphia, there's still there are a couple of teams that you could make the argument that the Knicks have a more consistent prototypical point guard, which is advantageous. And you also have clarity in terms of what Jalen Brunson's going to be. Even with, let's say, for example, James Harden, we don't know which James Harden is going to come to camp for Philadelphia opening night. And that should be concerning. And so there are some question marks around the league or around the Eastern Conference that actually can work to the Knicks' advantage. So I would say that in terms of where he ranks in the Eastern Conference in terms of point guards, I could easily say he's in that top third, maybe definitely top half, top third of point guards in the Eastern Conference. Obviously, Trae Young and DeJounte Murray, you have to be scared of them. LaMelo is a very special player. There are a few quirks in his game. But I would say that he's easily top third in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, yeah, I'm high on this because, like I said, with the Dallas situation when Luka was out, that tells me a lot. A guy that can step up. He's been a winner wherever he's been as Brunson. He's used to it, and I think that's just going to rub off on this locker room. A guy that has belief comes in his ability. All of his game is ascending. Every part of it is ascending, and he's just going to make this team better in so many different ways. And M. Rivera, great point as well. If you look at how good we were 2 years ago with D Rose in his prime with the Knicks, and the team will be run similarly in terms of he can get downhill, he can get others involved. Except if D Rose is healthy, we will have two of those guys.
Yeah,
We'll have
yeah.
two of those guys split for 48 minutes, and that's going to be exciting. And I think he ranks around that upper half. How much higher, I'm not sure, but he's just going to make this team so much better. In terms of other ways. Not just the scoring, isolation. You can to have a point guard that you can just give the ball to and can get you a bucket in isolation. That's also what D Rose was able to do for us.
And move the ball. I mean, the other thing too is like, how many games did we watch? And this is not Julius slander. This is just, if we remember what happened last season, how many times would Julius bring the ball up and it would be a level of indecision and indecisiveness that really would sometimes lead to a turnover, would lead to bad shots. Because, I mean, I don't think Julius we haven't quite figured out what Julius is in this system. He's not a clear, smooth point forward. So taking some of those possessions and having Jalen Brunson organize the offense, that to me is a major plus. For whatever deficits or whatever limitations he may have as a player, being able to speed up the offense. I mean, we were an incredibly slow offense, and we talked about it over and over again. The need to speed it up, to speed it up, to speed it up. And part of speeding up basketball, and again, I'm not a professional basketball player, nor have I ever been, but based upon all the interviews we've seen, part of it is having the ability to see a play before it happens. Part of it is having the confidence of knowing when I make this move, the rest of my team will operate because they know what I'm thinking because we've practiced this. If you're not confident, you won't move with that speed that comes with confidence. And I think that's something that we sometimes saw with Julius as being one of the primary ball handlers last year, is that wasn't his natural thing to do. But Jalen Brunson, that's what he's meant to do. He's meant to bring the ball up. He's meant to organize an offense. And I think and I hope this will speed up the offense, which will lead to more possessions and lead to more scoring.
Yep, definitely. I feel like everything you just said is on point. And we have a great question from the chat. Marvin, salute. And everyone out there, throw us any questions. We're happy to ask. We'll put EJ on the spot. No, I'll take
again. I'm gonna walk out.
I'll take a few of them. I'll take a few bullets. But we'll obviously talk about Hartenstein as well. We've been chopping up Brunson, but let's just talk about Mitch as well while we're on this topic. And Marvin's question is, is it realistic that we passed on the opportunity to get Jalen Duren? And obviously we've had to pay Mitchell now $60 million as well. So good question. I'll answer it first, and then I'll get your thoughts. I feel like Duren, they may have been really high on. He just doesn't fit the timeline here. I think he needs years of development with Tom Thibodeau here. And also on draft night, that move to move down and move back, it was critical in order to get the Jalen Brunson thing over the line. So in terms of Mitch, I think they warmed to him as the season went along, and I think that's when he really won them over to get that money.
Yeah, the other thing too is that I don't think that the two moves, the Duren move, the Jalen Duren move, plus the Mitch move, are necessarily related. I think the Jalen Duren move and Jalen Brunson are connected. I don't think that the Mitch move and Duren move are connected, because Mitch you could have signed to go over the cap because he's your player. If I understand the cap rules correctly. Also, there's something about re-signing a player that has already proven he can play in New York, as opposed to a rookie. we've seen Mitchell Robinson grow as a player, and he had a pretty good season last year. Um, and one of the things I said repeatedly on the podcast is imagine what he could possibly be with a point guard. Now he
Yep.
has a point guard. There were a number of times, and we do have to question the maturity in terms of some of the posts. Like that's not necessarily all the way professional, but you could understand his frustration when he would go and have a block party and he's racing down the court and he throws his hands up to say like, just get me for the lob, reward me for the hard work I just did, and someone takes an ill-advised shot and he has to hustle back and play defense again and not get a lot of touches. Um, so there might be a maturation in Robinson's game because there's a more natural point guard. Not to say that Duran won't be a good player, but we've seen Mitchell Robinson do it in New York. And we've seen him do it without a really competent starting point guard, and a healthy point guard at that too. So I would say the thing that we need to make sure is that Mitch remains healthy, perhaps develops more of an offensive game, and improve those free throws. Improve those free throws.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Mitch has some key areas that he needs to focus on this off season. It's going to be a incredible storyline to see how he comes out. After getting paid well now, and I'm still confident his game's got a lot of growth in it. To me, it goes beyond Mitch. This signing to me reflects that we drafted a player 4 years ago, and we're seeing we're going to have the opportunity to see their best days as a New York Knick rather than them go to another team. And we have all seen the young players of the past that have left the Knicks, and some haven't done as well and some have done better with other teams. We're going to have this opportunity now to see Mitch and see what he's made of. Basically, he's going to be under pressure now that he's being paid well. He's being paid like a starting center.
Yeah,
Before, the argument was always like, oh, but Mitch is on 1.8 mil. What can you expect? This is what you get from a 1.8 mil center. But now there's no argument against that anymore. He's getting paid 15 mil, and he's going to have to produce. So EJ, yeah, is Mitch going to be okay with that pressure? And do you feel like his game will improve with this new point guard
yeah.
situation?
Yeah, I do think that his game will improve. I do think that the other thing we have to remember his age. I work with young people, and I can tell you there's something that happens in terms of maturation. I forget how old Mitch is exactly, but he's at the point where developmentally speaking, his body's not also maturing, but his mind is maturing as well too. And we have to account for that as well too. So having a better understanding of his body, having a better understanding of even how to operate as a professional. This is a kid who didn't go to the traditional basketball route of going to a powerhouse university that's
Yep.
like a Kentucky that Calipari's sitting there and he's training you for on the job NBA preparedness. This is someone who took a kind of circuitous route to get to the NBA, and he wasn't a first round draft pick. He was a late pick. So, kudos to him putting in the work. Kudos to the development staff for the Knicks. I complain about the development of Knicks players all the time, but this is a player who has grown a lot for someone who is, a lot of people passed on him to someone we now are actually giving out a second contract to. And that means that there is room for growth, but we also have to applaud the growth that he's already made and that the organization has made in terms of providing for him to grow as a player.
Yeah, and as part of growth, I will say EJ Chat is being pushed by the other teammates. Now he's got competition.
Yeah,
He's got Jericho Sims, who I expect to come in and be much improved as well. He's already better in some regards in terms of setting screens for me, and a little bit better around the basket with jump hooks. That's something
yeah,
I really want Mitch to improve on: free throws and jump hooks, and then defensive rebounds, keeping the ball above his head when he
yeah,
catches it,
yeah,
or tip backs. There are so many times when Mitch tries to just catch the ball when he's got two guys on him off balance, and I feel like he would have been better just trying to tip the ball back out.
Yeah.
and can catch that.
I definitely think, yeah, that's part of that maturation process. And that's kind of like where we have to kind of give him a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit of slack, because again, he didn't go to a major program, and he was a steal. I forget who said this in the chat, but it was JW who said this. He was a second round steal. He absolutely was a second round
Yeah.
steal. And the thing with second round steals is, you know, you have to put a little bit more work to round that kid that into a final product, a better and more a more solid final product. So he has a lot of rounding to do, like in terms of like making sure that, you know, if he blocks a shot, keeping it in bounds, making sure he secures defensive rebounds, and even figure out, and we had this conversation last week, making sure he understands his body. Do I need to be bulkier? Do I need to be leaner? You know, those are things that, you know, as kids mature and become 24, 25, 26, you start to get a better sense of what you should be doing, particularly as a professional.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Right. And in the gym, Kenny Payne had a big part of his growth, I feel like. Now Kenny
Yeah.
Payne's moved on. It's going to be critical who we have to work with these big men. Chat, help me out. Is there anyone designated that you know of, EJ, as well, that works with the big men now that Kenny Payne's no longer here? And is that a void that the Knicks need to really look at and fill? Because Mitch he's a blank canvas to me still. He has potential, you know, in terms of what he can do, right? Anything's possible for a young player. And a good question from Mike D is, now that he's secured, do we think in a blowout he actually might just, you know, have the shackles off and shoot the three?
it'll it'll be in the same game that Ben Simmons shoots a three. I can't. I hope in a blowout Mitch isn't playing. If it's a blowout that we're winning, I hope it's a good sign that he's already on the bench, because he's had some health concerns, he's had some injury concerns. So I hope that we're
Yeah.
not in the position where he actually has to shoot a three. You know, if he could, you know, I remember back in the day, like around the 2010s, and I'm not sure if he still does this, but Hakeem Olajuwon would have these big man camps where he would go and, like, you know, I forget who it was who would, I think he actually even worked with Amari Stoudemire in like 2010, 2011 in terms of footing and just, you know, working with big men in terms of how to score down low in the paint. I'm not sure if he still does that. I haven't heard of any players that work with the Dream, but it would be great if they even found someone. I mean, and that's the thing. I sometimes wish that the Knicks publicize this a little bit more. You have a history of just great players who can work with you. Like, for example, I know Patrick is very busy with Georgetown, but there are a number of, you know, players who would work with the Knicks and as freelancers just to work on certain skills and skill development. So I hope that they lean into that, particularly because now you are investing $60 million into Mitch, and you know, you don't want it to be 4-on-5. You don't want it to be 4-on-5.
Yeah. And Mitch has a decent handle for his size as well. It ain't just got to be about the shot. I liken a play, and it got everyone excited when he faked the dribble handoff. You know,
Charlotte,
yeah. Plumlee sagged off. You know, was already moving towards, you know, the dribble handoff, cutting that off, and then Mitch just took it to the rack from the 3-point line all the way home, straight down Broadway, and that had me excited too. So that, like Lex the Destroyer says, in terms of the green light, Mitch can grow in confidence if the coach, you know, does, you know, just give him that, you know, empowerment to say, hey, you know, read the play. It's a read and react offense. If they're sagging off you, then make them pay.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like it's playground basketball.
Yeah, it's to Lex's point. I think we also have to remember too, like the team's composition might be changing. You know, I'm still of the mind, and I've been saying this since, you know, we started chatting with CT, that RJ, Mitch, and Julius, it's clunky in the middle, and I'm still of the mind that we might be going into this season with Julius on the roster, but I can imagine, you know, at some point this season, perhaps near the trade deadline, where, you know, Julius is sent out, and that might open. I don't think it might. It will definitely open up the offense a little bit more for Mitch and for RJ as well, because I can just imagine how many times we're going to see the three of them just having a tea party in the middle of the paint because they're all going to try to figure out what do we do here. But I do think that if you remove one of those three, and it's definitely going to be Julius, it's not going to be Mitch, it's not going to be RJ, it's going to be Julius, that it could open up more room for Mitch to have an offensive set. It's particularly if we can get a stretch four in some way, shape, or form.
Yep. And also, the same comparison I said about Brunson about getting paid. It could have a positive impact in the fact that Mitch has got a little bit of the pressure off. Playing with in a contract year, the pressure of trying to just when you get the ball, you don't really look to pass, to be honest, because you need your numbers. Now Mitch can maybe flesh out more of his game. He's got 4 years guaranteed money from the reports, so it's not going to matter if he's numbers are down or not. Maybe he can improve with the vision, the playmaking, and and I mentioned the competition. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, let's touch on also the second big signing in free agency, one Isaiah Hartenstein from the LA Clippers, as you see announced by Shams, and a 2-year deal, 16 mil overall, 8 mil per, and the sources say fully guaranteed. Now, this was a guy, EJ, that was mentioned days before free agency that the Knicks, I think good reporting from SNY in Begley said that the Knicks would be aggressive in their pursuit. And I think if anything about the tampering situation, like a guy like this, the fact that straight after free agency, it's announced that it's signed, and he's CAA, this was a done deal. It sounded like to me 2 days ago.
Oh yeah. This is more tampering, the chat, tell me what you think. This is more tampering than Jalen Brunson. Because Jalen Brunson, you could argue, his father works for the team. Leon Rose's son represents Jalen Brunson. You could argue it's not tampering because it's family. You can't legislate that. You can't really, there's nothing you can do about that. But this with clear terms, with how there's smoke and it became a fire. This is more of the tampering accusations. But what I really like about this signing, and I can totally be honest, he wasn't the player I was on League Pass checking out, but it's a different dynamic than Nerlens Noel. I mean, Sac Passe to Nerlens Noel, my Haitian brother, but I would cry every time they would throw a ball into Nerlens Noel and he would fumble it. And, it'd be somebody's running back for a touchdown. But this is a different dynamic with someone who has a little bit more of an offensive game, with a little bit more refinement. That's good, particularly because we don't know what's going to be happening with Taj. If Taj is going to be bought out, if Taj is going to be waived, or he's not going to be resigned. But this is something that is exciting. And then again, the age range, there's something that's happening with the Knicks in terms of they're trending younger, which is something that's exciting. So I'm excited to see what he offers. And, Tom Thibodeau can't be upset about his front court. He has his centers.
Yeah, definitely. And I mentioned, the pressure he's going to put him and Sims backing up Mitch. This just means that we have 3 guys now that are capable of backing up, starting at any point. There's going to be depth, which is great. And it sounds like, and we'll talk about this overall, that the Knicks are pushing to get back into the playoffs. Again, Isaiah Hartenstein, he's only 24 years old, but he's another player that's growing in terms of hasn't reached his ceiling yet from what we've seen. And this could be a real team-friendly deal as well. Now, I understand actually some concerns are when you're paying a starting center 15 mil, EJ, I want to get your thoughts. Are you okay with paying a backup 8 mil if your starting center is making 15 mil? Or is it the fact that Isaiah is young and that Mitch has some injury concerns in the past? Does that cancel it out?
I think it's a little bit of both. Obviously, we need some wings on this team, but it may be it's a sign of what they're thinking in terms of the minutes they're going to give to Quentin Grimes, the minutes they're going to give to Cam Reddish, hopefully, where if you're not going to pay for a wing, you're going to secure and you're going to use that money on the front court. And you needed to secure Mitch, and in part, the Mitch contract for $15 million. It might be in part because there's something that they may not be. They may be seeing something that we're not seeing in terms of what he can possibly be. So is it $15 million for what he's already done or what he might become within a season or two with continued development with a point guard, with more of a green light on the offense? So will we be looking at this contract and saying, oh my gosh, like he's actually underpaid? And again, going back to my point from earlier before, some of these numbers won't even matter in 3 or 4 years when the CBA changes. So $15 million for Mitch, I'm kind of okay with. $8 million for a backup center. Again, we have to spend the money at some point. If there's something that they see in terms of changing up and moving younger, then I actually don't have a problem with it. I really don't have a problem with it, because the question I would throw back to anyone, including UCT, is what else will we be spending the money on?
Oh, great question.
Great
question. Yep.
And if this is a talent that you can see a pathway of development, then I don't mind using it, because the one thing that we're starting to see around the league is sometimes you need larger contracts for future moves. So you might need an $8 million contract that you can attach with a pick or another contract to get, a starting, what have you. Because that's the other part of it too as well that we have to think about.
Yep, spot on. And salute to everyone in the chat coming through. Everyone smash that like button. We're chopping up this free agency as well. We're moving in the right direction for me overall. But I want to hit on a few chats. Ronald, it's very clear Tibbs values the rim protection. Spot on, big time. I think this is a combination of a lot of things. The CAA obviously got him on their radar, and the play late in the season that I bring up, you see the stats there, everybody. He's a player ascending. And I also want to mention the main fact is, like EJ hit on, you sign a player unrestricted free agency. What you're doing is you're basically just bringing in a free asset. It doesn't matter what position they play, what age. If that player is an asset around the league or could be an asset around the league in years to come, and you have the chance to sign them for just cap space, then it should be heavily considered as well. Isaiah Hartenstein, after 1 or 2 years, he could be used in a bigger trade as well. We got him for $8 million. It may not mean that he's going to be around forever, but it's solid insurance in case of Mitch. It's solid insurance, and sometimes you just have to pay for a good young player that's ascending. Now, I would have been fascinated to see what his market would have been had he not been locked in by the Knicks straight away. Maybe he wouldn't have got that much. But from some of the experts and the reports say that he was basically around the league. He was wanted, EJ.
Yeah. And that's the thing too. It's like, some of these deals, you have to kind of just put the number on the table that will get the person to sign the contract, especially with what's happening in the league right now, where there are certain players who can't make a move because of certain larger deals that people are waiting for. So once the Kevin Durant news hit, there are certain players who can't sign because they're waiting for the fallout to take place because of such a larger deal. So if you're the Knicks and you have a target, you want that target, that's the target you identified, put the contract, don't mess around, don't put dollars, before things that make sense. Just get it done, because you'll know, okay, we can definitely take care of this and it'll be over with. So if this is a player that they identified, and again, I'll be honest, I wasn't watching a lot of his games, so I can't speak with total confidence that he's the be all end all. But if they identify this as a player that will make the team better and also be a tradable asset, because that's the other piece that I always think about too, is it a tradable asset in the future? get it done so that you don't have to worry about it and you're not hemmed up by what's happening, for example, with KD or Kyrie.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And to me, the next element is his game. Yeah, he has a multifaceted game. We need players that are versatile.
Yeah.
That are big. We haven't had a big man that can pass since, I don't want to mention his name, but he didn't live up to his contract with the Knicks. But we've had some big men. I guess Kyle O'Quinn.
Yeah.
I'll
Kyle
give
Kuzma's a
Kyle
really good passer.
I'll give Kyle O'Quinn his props as well. The back door with the chemistry he had with Dougie McBuckets and that. Yeah. Again, this is the second time this free agency where we've basically stolen a player from a team that wanted that player back.
Yeah.
So that tells you all you need to know, ladies and gentlemen. Would the Clippers have love to have Hartenstein back? They would have, but yet he's chosen us. The money talks, like EJ said. He has a chance to push Sims even more, and he has a chance to be that tradable asset that we may need, and we probably will need. We know what this front office's direction is now. We've been saying all the way leading up to this draft free agency, what is the direction they're going to choose. To me, they're still trying to, pseudo develop a little bit for the young players, but it does look like they're trying to get back to the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah.
EJ.
Yeah. It's definitely trend younger, but at the same time, make it to the playoffs, which in a way makes sense because, if you're looking to make a trade for a superstar, or, that next level down, there has to be a team that excites them. It has to be a team where they feel as if they can win. There's a reason why I keep on mentioning him, but those players in Brooklyn, there are particular places they want to play. They want to play in places that are exciting, but also have the potential of winning. Smaller market teams have to tank. Philadelphia did it for a while, but it's hard to get superstar players excited about places that are routinely losing. Is it the path that I would take? I'm not sure, but I do like the fact that they are trending younger. That is
Yep.
something that does excite me. The fact that most of their players are younger than the age of 26, that definitely excites me because, again, these become more tradable assets in the future.
Yep. And for all the worries that Tom Thibodeau gives us and headaches and things like Dolan and Leon's direction, one thing that doesn't give me any headache is the cap situation with this team. They know the cap pretty well, Brock Aller, and they've had some flexible contracts. And moving forward, I know they wouldn't have committed this money if they didn't feel like they could, be a team-friendly deal, move out from it. Well, I think they have been pretty prudent. And EJ, great question from John Salute is, we'll talk more about the cap situation coming up, but with let's say the Knicks are around that 5 mil, we could obviously waive Taj Gibson still.
Mhm.
There's, the sign and trade options with Fournier and, and a bigger trade with Randall possibly coming up, not as likely, but possible. And then maybe if we construct all these contracts to be us ending, maybe we do find ourselves with 5 to 10 mil left. Is there anyone out there that you feel like, would be a nice fit, outside of what we've talked about, Carmelo Anthony, that would be a veteran signing, a veteran minimum, but with cap space, what do you feel like Leon's next moves could be?
Oh, I spent all afternoon thinking about this. Um, I think the name that many people in the chat would probably get excited by. Shout out to the TJ Warren suggestion. There's definitely the Derrick Jones Jr. suggestion as well. I would also, it doesn't hurt to also wait because there's something about, some of these trades, and we've been seeing this recently where players are getting traded and then they're waived. And then that gives you a little bit more flexibility to sign someone that you may not necessarily have thought would be available. So again, there are some major trades that are coming. For example, the Rudy Gobert trade that took place earlier today. I don't think all of those players are sticking around in Utah. So if there are another two major trades that are going to be taking place before the start of training camp, do you just save the $5 to $10 million to see who gets waived, and then make a decision as opposed to locking up all of your money now and not having that flexibility a little bit later? Just one more thing, like for example, I'm not saying him in particular, but a player like him would be like a great signing. Like so, Gallinari, who got traded earlier. If you can find like a younger, Gallo, and sign him, like just think about like how great that would be in terms of shooting. Obviously, not so much for the defense, but someone for me, ideally, who can space the floor. That's what I'd be looking for.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
that 5 to 10 million range.
A name I've been mentioning just floated around there was Mike Muscala,
Mm,
a, a stretch four.
yeah,
You know, I know we're pretty full at most positions now with Randall and Obi at the four, Taj and Cam can play the four as well. Um, it's interesting what they might think of Hartenstein and another big man next to each other as well. But yeah, Muscala, just a need. To answer John's question and everyone out there, I would definitely look at what EJ just said is keep that money, but also if someone does become available that fits this roster, fits the need, or fits a hole, and one of them is shooting, and another one's positional versatility. Injuries happen, COVID things happen throughout the season. The more versatile your roster is, the better you can be. Look at Boston. They got
yeah,
guys that can. Grant Williams can guard on the perimeter. He can move around, and
yeah,
and that's why I love the Trevor Keels thing a lot. But salute Tarek as well. You mentioned Hartenstein. The sample size for his shooting wasn't a big sample size. They encouraged him to shoot more when they realized he could shoot it. You see his sample size was only 1.1 attempts from three, so it's not a lot of attempts. But yeah, shooting 50%. Just a guy that I don't even need him to shoot threes all the time. If he can just stretch the floor,
yeah, yeah.
Tibbs may really, really love him in certain lineups, and again, it's going to be good pressure for Mitch and co.
Especially to close out games. I mean, not saying that he'll replace Mitch in crunch time, but if you can have someone who's on the floor, especially when we do offense defense, if we do defensive lineups, you can imagine a world where on an offensive possession, you open up the lane late in the game with someone like him because of the threat of being able to hit an open jumper or like to stretch out the floor. So that is one of the reasons why you make these kind of signings. And like I said earlier, I think that's what I would save the last $5 to $10 million for, is another person who can open up that floor. Because again, we are pretty stacked at four, but if you can get that stretch four, that'd be great.
Yeah, definitely. And we have a super chat. Salute Ohio Hurricane. Appreciate your support as well. Donovan Mitchell? Question mark.
He plays for the Utah
Huge.
Jazz.
You're not getting off that easy. And chat. No, I'll take this one. I'll take it first. Salute Ohio again. Appreciate you. Donovan Mitchell. Look, to me, he has to be Leon's next big target. Like I always say, this front office, their moves are predictable. Like the Brunson thing was predictable. Hartenstein CAA. There's connections. There's family ties. They blew it up today. Well, by all reports, Rudy Gobert off to help me out, EJ. There's so much movement. I forget. I forget where Rudy Gobert is going.
He's going to Minnesota.
Minnesota. That's right.
Yeah.
And leaves Donovan Mitchell by himself there. They're trying to get out of Jordan Clarkson's deal. So what is this leading up to? It's definitely there's smoke saying that they're retooling, but I don't buy that smoke. I think they're getting more closer to blowing it up, Ohio. And then there's smoke that he wants to pair up in Miami with possibly KD as well. That's a little bit more like a Miami's name always gets thrown out there. I think Donovan Mitchell's best number one preference would be the Knicks, especially now that we got Jalen Brunson,
Yeah.
another ball handling point guard that can take pressure off Mitchell. And we have the assets, like Ronald was saying. We have picks in the future to move up. We have Obi and Quickly that would be a little bit more expendable now with Hartenstein and Brunson here. I think those guys would be more expendable. Cam Reddish,
Yeah.
I still think he's 50-50 to stay on this roster. So Ohio, I think the Knicks have a package that could satisfy Utah. I think they really could. I think they could put together one of the best packages that they've had to put together in a long time. and it wouldn't gut this roster so much as we thought it might, just because we've scored these 2 players in free agency. EJ.
I'm checking out the chat, and I love Donovan Mitchell. It would be a great story. If we had this conversation, if we were doing the podcast yesterday, I think it'd be a possibility. But with the Rudy Gobert trade, is that true?
I'm pulling it up.
I'm gonna keep on going.
Yeah.
The issue with the Donovan Mitchell trade is the Rudy Gobert trade was ridiculous. Like that, I mean, if you think about what was it, like 4 draft picks for Rudy Gobert, how many draft picks would it be? How many draft picks would it be for Donovan Mitchell? And then here's what happened, right? So the Rudy Gobert trade just made a Kevin Durant trade unbelievable. Like, if you're trading 4 draft picks for Rudy Gobert, what are you trading for Kevin Durant? And Donovan Mitchell would have to be somewhere in between. So this is the concern: is Utah got a great deal, and this is what I said last week. I don't know if you remember the CT. I said, I'm afraid if our front office ever has to go dueling with Danny Ainge. And Danny Ainge just showed you you don't mess around with him. He's not the one to mess around with. He's gonna rob you. He's a cowboy. He's a bad boy right there. So my fear is the price. What would it take to actually get a Donovan Mitchell? If this were a conversation that we were having yesterday, I think it'd be possible. But that Rudy Gobert trade changed the standards for the market. The market now is insane.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know about the OG thing, but in terms of Mitchell, I think it's not going to happen maybe straight away. Yeah, and I see some people saying it's not going to happen, but yeah, the Knicks will be in the conversation. I mean, this front office is operating a little bit more different. The Brunson thing, people thought the Knicks had no chance. They couldn't clear up space. They did it. Leon Rose and also Donovan Mitchell, with the connections with him, they would know more than anyone else. I think the moment that they're willing to trade him, the Knicks would be on it straight away. In terms of what could they put together, like I said, maybe not guys I would be willing to move on for, but you'd have to think a rebuilding Utah would love a Quickly, would love a Cam, Obi, picks. I mean, there's a reason we picked up all these picks.
Yeah.
Cat.
I think this would require some research. Is there a player we're not thinking about? Because there might be a player that it isn't Donovan Mitchell, but it's someone else who, and I'm not talking about Zion, I'm talking about a name we're not thinking about that is not going to be 5 draft picks, 6 draft picks, but we could be sending 3 draft picks. Because again, like that Rudy Gobert trade really, Brooklyn's going to be able to point to any team and say, listen, if he was able to get 4 picks, we want 6, and we want players who are young and who are on the path of becoming a star. So that's the concern. So like, is there someone we're not thinking about? That's what I would pay attention to.
Yeah. And a report from NBA Central that are quoting Ian Begley. So I just want to mention it's NBA Central. I'm not sure if Ian Begley did say this, but they're quoting Ian Begley saying the New York Knicks are hesitant to trade the combination of picks and players that it would take to land a player like Donovan Mitchell. So that they're hesitant. Like Ohio says, appreciate you again for the super chat, Ohio. The picks, yeah, absolutely. That's going to come down to one day whether it's not Mitchell, whether it is him, someone else. Those picks, they're not making those moves so that they can draft all those picks. we all know that Tom Thibodeau with here and Leon, they're not looking to build through the draft fully. So you expect those picks, everybody, to be on someone else's team one day, and whichever player it is, it's going to be interesting. The big surprise and the question about Minnesota, that surprised me to the chat. But one big surprise was Zach LaVine. Just Zach
Yeah.
LaVine re-signed for the bag,
Yeah.
which isn't surprising. But I thought he would give teams more interviews. How about you? Like especially out in LA.
Yeah. You know what? I think Zach Levine, I was kind of confused by the fact that he didn't make this a bigger process. But you know, for some players, that fifth year, year, that extra money, it's appealing. Um, and so this is where again, like when going back to um, Ohio Hurricanes question, you know, I think there were some of us who thought that Zach Levine was a possibility. Not a lot of us, but some of us thought that he'd be a possibility. Um, you have to kind of pay attention to someone under the radar who we're not thinking of, who would be a more manageable get. Um, I can't think of it. You know, I would have to go through the roster, every team's
Yeah.
roster, but you know, it's not going to be a Zach Levine. It's not going to be, for example, a Bradley Beal who resigned.
What I'll just quickly say to that is, EJ, is the beautiful thing is, in what we've seen with this crazy free agent, we don't know who's going to be available
Yeah,
next free agency. Contracts don't mean as much as they used to anymore.
yeah,
And also, all it takes is is for them to request a trade.
yeah,
And every year it's shown us there is somebody creeps up, pops up. Maybe um, uh, Ben Simmons, I'm not saying I want him, but maybe he gets so disgruntled and can't cope with the pressure that he wants to trade out in 1 year from now. Like
yeah,
these
yeah,
players, it's a whole new generation. And like EJ said, you work with young people, and it's a changing society, changing league, everything. It's player empowerment, and it's young players. You know, look at guys like Paolo Banchero and Anthony Simons that can just jump on social media and upload a Photoshop of
yeah.
them with KD.
No shame too. He's like, listen, I'm going to pitch you Orlando. You know, it's not just a vacation destination; it's the place to play. You know, yeah,
And
you're right.
he got killed. The next comment was like, "You realize you're in that deal to get KD."
Yeah, but that's the thing about the league is like I don't think any of us woke up this morning thinking that there would be this much activity that Rudy Gobert would be traded for what he was traded. Um, and I think that's, you know, I posted this on my social media, on my Twitter. This is what makes the league so exciting is, you know, I love football, I love baseball, I love hockey, but there's no professional team, there's no professional league in North America or that has this much drama. And think about like how much drama and how long it extends. It goes from free agency to, you know, actually in order from the draft to free agency and the rumors of the trade deadline. You know, we could actually do this all the time, and there's so many possibilities that we don't even think of. So, you know, there are there is probably someone in a conversation that's taking place that we don't know about, because I don't think many of us thought, you know, the other day that, you know, Rudy Gobert would be traded, KD would demand a trade, Kyrie, well, Kyrie was a possibility, but this is what makes the league so exciting and such a great league to follow. It's so dramatic.
It is. It's insane. One, I say it's the hardest league, professional sports league, to win because there's only 5 players on the court. There's 30 teams, and 1 or 2 generational players can
Yeah.
on a court with only 5 players on a team that can change a team's fortunes so much more drastically than football and
Mhm.
hockey and these other bigger team sports. And I will get to Cam. Appreciate that, M. Rivera as well. And yeah, we're recapping the Hartenstein situation as well, and also the fact that the next draft is very, very strong. 2023, M. Rivera says as well. I think that's the year that the Knicks obviously have planted themselves, put a flag in the ground, and say, hey, we're either going to use all these picks because they're so valuable that year, or that's the
Mhm.
year we might be able to get a real difference maker as well. And yeah, Isaiah Hartenstein in the small sample size, EJ, great great signing for me. Let's see about the money. 2-year deal, fully guaranteed, but it will be tradable. Like $8
Yeah,
million is a team
something.
friendly deal. Even if, worst case scenario, he stinks it up, we could attach a couple of seconds to move 8 mil.
Yeah, and here's the thing to consider as well too. Brock Eiler, the hiring of Brock Eiler was considered to be one of the key hires a few years ago because of his reputation of knowing the cap and knowing it so well. And Walt Perrin, the other key hire that everyone was really excited about was Walt Perrin and his understanding of talent and being able to do so well in terms of drafting. So if this 2020, the reason why I say this is because um, it would be, I don't know these people, but I wouldn't be surprised if Walt Perrin and Brock Aller have not, if they haven't had a conversation or two or three, and they haven't figured out how are we going to get an impact player from this 2023 draft? How are we going to do that? What are we going to do? How are we going to position ourselves so that when we need to make a move, if we need to make a move, we can actually do it? I know
Yeah.
that a lot of people were disappointed with this past draft, the fact that we didn't stick with Jalen Duren. But I think what we've seen the last three drafts, and we have to be fair, we have to be honest, this front office has shown the ability to make moves on draft night to get what they want if they want something really badly. Um, I would say that that would also be true for the 2023 draft, which by all reports is the draft that you want to have moves. I will throw this out because I know someone in the chat's going to say it. We have moved back for every draft, but I do think that they're already figuring out ways to move up if they need to as well.
Yeah. And we're going to hit on EJ. I want to get your thoughts on the DeJounte Murray thing, because that fans were upset. Some fans were upset we didn't get in that sweepstakes, and I was too. Then when I did see the reports that it took 2 unprotected picks as well, that went up. The price was pretty steep as well in terms of fit as well. Now, I would still love DeJounte Murray on the team. I feel like he's a better player than Brunson as well. Both sides of the ball. But I don't know if I would give up 2 unprotected picks at this point in time. I would just go with the safer option. I'm okay with Brunson. What were your thoughts on that? And were you upset we didn't get in the conversation more with DeJounte?
At first when I heard, a lot of the chatter was about the possibility of getting both Brunson and DeJounte Murray. Obviously, you get excited. You're like, oh my gosh, two ball handlers, one who's like his defense is really stout, who can probably compensate for what Brunson might be lacking. But as time started to pass, you do start to evaluate. Was the price worth the actual player? And then I believe today I saw on his social media and the chat, you can help me out with this, that he may have said that the Knicks had no shot whatsoever because he wanted to go to Atlanta. And if a player,
Wow.
what we're starting to notice in this league, which makes it really fascinating, if a player wants to go somewhere, they're going to make it clear that's where they're going. So I don't know if we really had it. Trying to get DeJounte Murray may have been similar to, akin to, Miami trying to get an interview with or having a meeting with Jalen Brunson. You can say you want it, but it's not going to happen if he doesn't want to really do it.
Yeah, that's a great point. I did see him post something, but I missed what you said about the Atlanta thing. I did see him pay homage to San Antonio,
Hmm.
saying that they had that the ultimate blessing. They wanted him to have his prime on a winning team, which is sweet talk for saying we want to be in the stakes for Victor Wembanyama
Yeah,
this
yeah,
coming draft class. The Spurs, they know all about generational bigs, and that's their vision. They're going all in. But yeah, the Knicks, you know, some of the things they can't win if they do or they don't. It would have been LOL Knicks if they gave up some unprotected picks. But Atlanta do it, and it's a great deal. Look at Trey and DeJounte next to each other. If we had got him, it would have been look at DeJounte and RJ next to each other. Where's the shooting going to come from?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and also, I mean, the expectations are different. The expectations for both teams are different. You know, it could have been the same move, and obviously it would have been perceived differently. But also, Trey, Jalen is not Trey. You know, so I kind of I understand why. Um, I understand why Atlanta did that. It's because they're trying to mark their claim right now and say, okay, we're going to make a clear push for the playoffs this year, because they had a disappointing season last year. I mean, for what they expected to be and what they actually were, it was a disappointment. So I can understand them making more of a push. So we didn't
Yeah,
start in the same place. We didn't start in the same place as Atlanta. Um, so the same move can be perceived differently. So if a player does not want to play for the team and he had his heart set on playing for Atlanta, then by all means, you know.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And we'll talk a little bit more about the rotation and the roster now with these signings in tow and what that means. But just before that, let's just grade the moves. You know, I'm happy to give my grades overall, and we'll go back and forth each of us. But EJ, what was your what grade would you give the Brunson acquisition?
Whew, okay.
And chat, throw out your grades based on your expectations and how much you think this is going to help the team, contracts, all of that.
I would give the Brunson signing a B plus.
B
Fills a
plus.
need.
Yeah.
Yeah, fills a need. Best possible. The Knicks said D plus.
Keeping it real. Wasn't his number one target.
It was their number one target. It'll improve the team. And yeah, I would say B plus.
B plus. Okay. Yep. Obviously, your grades can change throughout the season, but just on the surface, and I think the number of what it took, yeah, I'd give it at a B. Yep. Yep. Solid B to be a B plus or an A, possibly. Yep. Definitely. Um, both a B plus for Dirty Dancer, and salute Jonovan, and Dirty's giving his grade for Mitch a C.
Check out
Yep.
their Jeremy.
Yep. B plus. And okay, so next one was Isaiah Hartenstein. Now this took me more by surprise. A week ago, I didn't really know much who he was. You know, I'm being real. I
Yeah,
don't watch the Clippers a lot, but I believe I saw the positive commentary around him, and then looking into him further, it's like a high upside signing. So I got to give this at a C plus.
I would agree. I would agree. This is one of those moves that don't necessarily move the needle now, but it's a solid pickup. Again, like we said before, just like in school, the grades can change. So this is just the first quarter. Second quarter, it might be raised up a little bit if we see him play, and he develops and he, you know, has more of an impact on the team that we possibly could have seen. So a C, solid C plus.
Yep, yep. We definitely easy transition into a B plus
Yep.
as well. Yep. Jeremy, salute. Yeah, high on Isaiah. A plus for him, value. Yeah, definitely could be a home run. Leon Co could be shown to be a genius.
Yeah.
Um, let's say, I'm not going to throw shade at Mitch or anything, but let's say he outperforms everybody, or he shows to be a competent starting center. Maybe then you allow yourself on $8 million. You allow yourself to entertain trade talks. Um,
That's what you
yeah,
want.
things like that. Yeah, value A contract as well from David, Jonovan, and A. And then the re-signing of Mitchell Robinson. EJ, what grade would you give the re-signing at Mitch for 15 per, which is more than I expected? I thought with the dwindled market it would be maybe between 12 to 14, but 15, maybe there's incentives involved, and 15 isn't the base number. We'll see.
I would say that Mitch resigning is a B. It's a B because he's one of our homegrown talents. He was a steal from the second round. The only reason why I would say it's a B is because the number is a big number, even though he is our defensive anchor. I mean, that's the other part that makes it kind of complicated. He is our defensive anchor. But some of the defensive plays he's made over the last 2 or 3 years have been incredible. And the other reason why too is because I'm looking for him to develop that offensive game. So that's a B that can easily become an A minus. So
Yep. Yep. Appreciate everyone's grades out there. A plus plus for Tarek. Hartenstein a B minus as well. Mike D B plus for Mitch. A plus for Mitch. Yet it's not just the play or the money. It signalizes a lot, that we're going to see the best years of a player we drafted as a Nick as well. And I hope he continues to grow and develop as well. Yep. So that's been awesome. Now, as we pivot to, we'll chop up summer league, a lot more to come. Chopping up the rotation and things to
yeah.
come. But just before we leave free agency for just this day, because there's going to be plenty more tomorrow. So far from what we've seen, EJ, is there anything that you would have liked to see the Knicks do different? Has this been positive for you, underwhelming? Is it just they've done what they had to do? Or is there anything that you feel like you would have liked them to do differently?
Just let's all remember what happened summer of what was it, 2019, when all of the rumors were that KD and Kyrie were coming to the Knicks, and it didn't happen. Jalen Brunson was someone who's been connected to the organization for the past 4 or 5 months, and it actually took place. It actually happened. He spurned, the Mavericks, resigning with the Mavericks. So this is something that we have to celebrate as Knicks fans, because not that I care about what ESPN says or other media outlet says, but the KD not signing with the Knicks, it's something that really hurt us, and it hurt our ego. It really bruised our egos across the league. But being able to get the person who was our number one target the entire offseason, that's a positive. So I'm happy that we accomplished what we set out to accomplish, and making the push for the playoffs. I want to see Knicks playoff basketball. Eventually, I want to see us compete for a championship. So we did what we needed to do. That's a positive step for me.
Yeah, I have to agree. Completely agree. It's a little bit more than a single, a double, not a home run, but
Triple?
it's a wait and see. We got better basically. We signed two talented players without having to trade for them, so that's a win. And like I mentioned before, the two teams that are losing those two players wanted those two players back, so that tells you something, that we've taken talent away from them, and we're still flexible. Like Leon's been doing short-term deals, flexibility. Mitch is committed for 4, Brunson's committed to 4, but Isaiah is another movable piece for just 2 years on that. And now he's got a lot to work with, as well as we lead into some question marks heading into this season, EJ. Two of
Yep.
the biggest question marks are RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish. So what would be a success for RJ? And we're going to touch on the news. Recently, I heard that both sides were pro getting a deal done early. So what are your thoughts on hearing that both sides are confident and working towards getting an extension done early? Because that would take a bit of pressure off RJ. And I feel like if he balls out, if we get it done sooner, we don't want to be the Dallas that lost out on Brunson.
Yeah. There aren't that many players from that draft that are worthy of a major second contract. Obviously Zion got his money, Ja got his money. There aren't that many players from that draft that really deserve that second contract. So it's not a question of if he'll get his second contract. It's a question of when and at how much. I think there's something to be said, and we said this earlier before, about being the kind of player who wants to play and stick around in New York. So that's big. That's big, and we did see RJ take a big leap, between that second and third season. So that's again another thing that should make us excited. I've been saying this all night. How will he grow next to Brunson? I think that he will definitely grow. I think that having someone who can kind of temper him, because I think towards the end of the season, when he realized he was going to be the man for the end of the season, sometimes he did take some ill-advised shots. But having someone who can say, all right, calm down, I'm going to put you in the right position, that's what we want to see. So I do hope that they take care of that contract extension soon. It's a natural contract extension to take care of.
Yeah, definitely. Yep. I think he deserves the money. It'd be great to get it done early. It's a foregone conclusion. Again, you retain the asset,
Mhm.
and how he fits with Brunson, like we talked about. I think he's gonna be a better fit with Brunson than some of the previous point guards we've had. Take more pressure off of him and all of that. And then also with Julius, that's a big question mark around what's going to happen with Julius.
Yeah.
That remains to be probably the top or the second biggest storyline after now with free agency, in full swing.
Yeah, it's funny. We never had a chance to ask Berman this, but I don't have any sources,
Yep.
But it almost seemed as if like there was something happening behind the scenes with Julius that we may not have known about, and you know, a lot of people suggested it was, well, the crowds are back, but this is a professional basketball player who's played in front of crowds his entire life. Um, so I don't know what it was, but hopefully there is some sort of breakthrough. Whatever was happening personally for him, or I'm hoping is behind him for this new season, so that you do increase his value. Because I can't really imagine a full season with Brunson, RJ, Julius, and Mitch in that lane. I do think that the logical play is increasing his value and giving him the freedom to play somewhere else ultimately.
Yep. Yep. No doubt. No doubt. And obviously Cam Reddish, EJ, there's definitely going to be a question or action taken with Cam Reddish. The first thing that
Yeah.
needs to take place is if he's not traded this offseason, he needs to get minutes. Now, he's not in the summer league team. There was speculation or fans thought that it might be a good idea to get some reps in at summer league, but Cam in a free agent year probably doesn't want to risk that injury, and
Mhm.
he's mature as well. Although Lonzo Ball is going to play in summer league, so some mature age players do play. But with Cam, it needs to start with the minutes. And I'm bullish on his future in the Knicks. I know his potential, but so far he's it's in his own hands. Basically, I feel like the future is in his hands.
Yeah, I mean, this is a make or break season for him. I mean, we saw what happened with Kevin Knox. I believe Kevin Knox signed a 2-year contract with Detroit. Um, this is the season where you have to find some sort of way to get minutes for Cam, so that
Mm.
that first round draft pick, we don't want that to have been a waste. It's one thing to trade Kevin Knox. It's another thing to trade Kevin Knox and a first round draft pick for someone who doesn't pan out. Particularly, these next couple of drafts are going to be really important. Those are assets you don't want to have wasted. I do think, in part, one of the reasons why the Knicks haven't picked up a wing is with the prospect of giving Cam more time to be on the court. I think that's part of the plan, to create the room for him to have more time to play. And I hope that is the plan. It seems to be the plan. We might be able to do that more depending what happens with Fournier or with Randall. But I do think that this is definitely a front office that's conscious of public perception. And I
Oh
don't
yeah,
think they want, if you have a media policy where you don't speak to the media, you're very cognizant of what the media is saying about you or what's the public perception of you is. And I do think that in some way, shape, or form, they're going to try to find a way to ensure that Cam either proves that he was worth the trade or displays, well, we tried to take this swing at this player, but he just didn't pan out, because we get to see that he didn't pan out, as opposed to never getting the minutes.
yeah. It was a great trade. I compare it to one of the best trades EJ the Knicks have done in years in terms of getting a high upside guy. And I feel like the Knicks will get something back for Cam if they don't keep him. I think he's a trade deadline decision away, because they're not going to, if they're unsure of his future yet at the trade deadline, they're not going to risk maybe losing that for nothing. And I say that because he has value around the league
Yeah,
still.
yeah,
At his contract, a high upside swing is Cam Reddish. And also want to hit on that point Ronald made about RJ's extension. Um, how does it getting the deal done now impact the flexibility for next offseason? Does that factor in as well. Because maybe if they both agree to wait, that could be a over the cap sort of signing as well. But I feel like his cap hold's going to be a heck of a lot higher than what Mitch's was for
Yeah,
this one.
I'm not a capologist, but I'm pretty sure that his cap hold has a bearing in terms of what happens with this offseason. So they might be waiting to determine the signing based upon what happens with regards to first Brunson. How are they going to actually fit Brunson into the cap, and then Hartenstein, and then all the other moves will take place as well. So I think this is just like a wait and see, like how are we actually going to get Jalen on the roster, how are we going to get Isaiah on the roster, and then we'll figure out all the other moves because of the cap implications. But at the same time, going back to that previous question, I do think, like I said earlier, Brock Aller, Walt Perrin, they're very cap conscious. This is not the same old Knicks from 15 years ago, like the Shandon Anderson, the Shandon Anderson Knicks, the Howard Isley Knicks. No. It's a different. Even with Phil Jackson, we have to. He was good at cap management as well as maintaining draft assets. As much as I'm not a fan of his administration, the last two administrations have been pretty good at keeping their draft picks, even though Phil Jackson wasn't great at making them, but at least keeping them and keeping the cap manageable.
Yeah, that's something I said before. I'm confident that these guys will have all the dialogue, the intel they need as well. I'm summarizing the free agency so far. It's been a success, not a home run, but a success for us. We're moving forward as an organization. We're doing things that we haven't done previously, which is have players sign with us, in free agency, players on the uptick as well. Let's see what they do next. And another big thing is the Randall and the Fournier salaries. That's again flexibility where with our picks, if we needed to say get $30 million more, we could clear those guys, EJ. And these next few days of free agency, buckle up. There's going to be a heck of a lot more buzz. And just touching on the summer league now situation, EJ, the summer league squad and the schedule was released, chat as well. Looking forward to this thing. A lot of names we predicted. We got Ferron Hunt, we got MJ Walker, a summer league favorite, coming back. Dice Yoshimoto, consistency coaching. Who else has got you most excited, chat and EJ, for this summer league situation?
My two people I want to keep an eye on are Deuce and Jericho. Definitely excited to see Deuce, to see what he is, to see the kind of growth. Is there going to be any ability to see any kind of growth in his game? And to see Jericho as well. Sometimes last season, particularly towards the end of the season, when it felt like Tom Thibodeau was given the edict, you have to play Jericho Sims. At times, it felt like Jericho was in the game, and it kind of felt like he was afraid of any offensive game. So I want to see, if there's any emphasis on developing Jericho and Deuce in terms of their confidence in terms of being part of any offensive sets and being part of the offensive game plan.
Yeah, definitely. John Montero, my thoughts
on
that
that's
situation.
Your guy.
Yep. Although with this log jam now, we got Quickly, Rose, Deuce, Brunson. People saying Trevor Keels was a point guard. I didn't even know that. I thought Trevor Keels was more of a shooting guard, or a 2 or a 3. But I do know he has secondary playmaking situations. So yeah, the 2 draft picks, Keels and or the undrafted guy Montero, and then obviously Deuce and Grimes. Those guys, I'm really looking forward to those guys, EJ, to show how much they've matured ahead of anyone else.
Yeah, the Montero pickup we talked about last week was an important one, particularly because of the professional experience. It's always interesting to see the difference between players who are part of the American system, American college system, versus players who play international ball. So, he's one to watch as well to see, what is he? Because again, a lot of us haven't spent a lot of time watching international basketball, but the opportunity to see him in the Knicks Summer League, that will be really important.
Yeah, yeah, and like I touched on, you got to get out there, EJ, at some point. I would love to try to get out there, not this one, maybe next year. And the good thing is 5 games, ladies and gents, 4 games plus every team will have an additional game announced at a later date. And then if we advance, more games. So, hey, New York Knicks basketball stand up July 8th, not far away. What is that, less than a week away?
Yeah, next week. I did make the promise. You guys didn't hear about this. I'm going to say this on the chat, on the actual podcast. I made CT the promise next year. I'll try to be a live correspondent for Knicks Buzz TV to make sure that we have a live correspondent at Summer League. So next year, 2023, we're going to be doing Knicks Buzz live from Summer League.
Yep, definitely. Yep. Hopefully Mark Berman can help us out or something, you know. But no, if not, we'll just be there rocking out. Everyone else
Absolutely.
that's going or anyone else that's looking to go, I know some people have talked about, some of the names aren't as attractive this time around, but yeah, we got 2 new players, 2 returning players, and some other G League guys as well, Farron Hunt, and one notable omission was Rokas Jokubaitis.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
heard he might be dealing with an injury, but I also heard that Barcelona aren't a fan of him coming down. So his current team, which is his current employer, fair enough, they don't want him really dealing with the Knicks at the moment. So that's going to be interesting. A lot of people aren't confident Rokas will come anytime soon with this log jam, EJ.
Well, I mean, Jalen Brunson does determine a lot of what was going to happen with Rokas. But it doesn't mean that we won't ever see Rokas in the league at some point.
Yeah.
Again, these are controllable assets that at some point you never know what might happen. One of the things that we're learning, especially this week, is you need controllable assets at manageable cost because of future moves. I'm always thinking about what can this move become, and so will we actually have Jalen Brunson? Will Jalen Brunson be a part of a future move that we're not even thinking about, and then all of a sudden Rokas becomes a consideration a year or 2 from now? That's just something to think about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, he's an asset and could be really good in a trade, EJ, with no salary, a player with upside and promise. And who has you most high on this summer league squad? Chat, let us know. Ronald says, want to see Grimes show growth. Yeah,
Definitely,
other parts of
definitely.
his game. What other parts of Grimes' game do you think can pop? And how high are you on Grimes?
Yeah, the 3 and D, if we can get Quentin Grimes to become that 3 and D guy, I would be so over the moon. I'd be so excited because that's you want to see growth, and I think we talked about this last week. What was really exciting with certain teams over the around the league is you got to see certain players in their second to third year take that jump. And so with Quentin Grimes, who got a lot of playing time, particularly towards the end of the season, you want to see, is it possible for him to take that leap into his next season in terms of development and confidence? Because the way that the roster's shaking out right now, it's pretty clear that he's probably going to be getting some time if there aren't any other major moves before the start of training camp.
Yeah, definitely. And Dice, he's got his hands full with
Yeah.
this one. But yeah, I'm excited for the 5 games, EJ, just to see some Knicks ball and what's to come in free agency as well. Let's keep our finger on the pulse. It's been fun chopping this up tonight, and
Definitely.
let's continue this dialogue with this free agency. It could only go better from here for the Knicks. They've got a nice roster now to move forward. They've still got some flexibility, and that look out for that big name with their picks to see what's next for Leon. Is there any predictions you're willing to make yet?
No, I mean, again, this free agency has been, I'm constantly checking Twitter. And everyone, if you can just do us a favor, just check us out on Twitter. CT is always, and Knicks Bugs is always tweeting reactions. I'm always tweeting reactions to things that are happening in the league. But this has been an exciting off season. I don't have any predictions because it's been so crazy. And again, I'm still reeling from Rudy Gobert for draft picks. I still can't make sense of that, bro. But I do think that, once the KD thing happens, this is going to be a very different Eastern Conference.
It is, yeah. Wider league wise, it's insane, right? Where does KD go? He's trying to force his way to Phoenix or Miami, so that's going to be crazy as well. But everyone out there, smash the like button. Yeah, follow us on Twitter, and I look forward to chopping up on the next show. Appreciate everyone's support. Join the comment section as well on the replay, gang, and we'll see you soon. EJ, any last words you want to say before we wrap up today?
Yeah, no, always. Just thank you so much, CT. Thank you to the chat. It's always fun to chop it up with you guys. Just shout out to everyone who tuned in. Just a quick shout out to my brother Mac for tuning in as well. Thank you so much. And always, I love to give a shout out to Mark Thurman because he's the man, who's the OG who connected me and CT. So thank you so much, guys. And that's it, man. So thanks, man.
Yep, appreciate it. Yep. And a super chat from Lars as well. Down Under, appreciate you as well. Great show. Thanks a lot. Means a lot. And a lot more content coming. Going to be chopping up some of the more focused acquisitions and breakdowns on their game as well. But peace to everyone in the chat. Appreciate you. Let's get it on the next one. And we'll see you soon.